So hello everyone, welcome back to another climbing video. It's been a little while, there've been a couple of vlogs, but today I am filming a climbing video. I'm filming the second instalment of my climbing progression series. So not so long ago I uploaded the first instalment of this series, the climbing progression series, which took you through pretty much when I started climbing to 2017, I would say. So my first 3 years of climbing and my experience and my improvement and just like my climbing story. So this video is going to follow on from that. It's going to take you through another 3 years basically, so through 2017 to basically like the beginning of this year. And for me it's just been a really nice way to revisit my climbing journey when I can't physically climb so much. It's been nice to kind of delve back into the archives and relive that journey. I've seen a few of these on YouTube, as I said in my previous video, and I just find them really interesting. I think I just really enjoy seeing people's progression and improvement and how their relationship with climbing develops as they climb for longer. It is a little self-indulgent, I realise, but today I am self-indulging. So yes, let's get on with the video. Before I get into the climbing progression, I wanted to set aside a minute to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community which gives you access to thousands of classes online in a variety of topics and subject matters. If there's something that you are interested in learning about, there's likely a Skillshare class for you to learn about it through. So I've been using Skillshare for I'd say around about a month now, and I've been loving learning about different styles of animation, brushing up my skills in video editing and leveling up my organisation skills, or trying to, by taking classes in bullet journaling. So Skillshare works out at just under $10 a month for an annual subscription, and the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare's premium membership. So if you do decide to take me up on that offer, please let me know what kinds of things you've been learning about. I'd be really interested to know what you're interested in. Thank you very much for listening to the sponsor. Having sponsors on this channel really does help me to continue making this content, so I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the sponsor. But now let's dive back into the progression video and head back to the end of 2017, middle of 2017. No, the end of 2017. So I think I left off the video having just climbed my first 6C, or is that V4, V5, in the Forest of Font, and just being really like psyched on climbing, getting back from that trip and just being like, I just want to climb all the time. We were in the gym all the time, we were trying to get outdoors as much as possible over that autumn and winter, so 2017-18. I think in the new year of 2018 we dabbled a bit in trad climbing, so we had a friend take us to a local spot and try some ropes, and I just remember being absolutely terrified, which is kind of a recurring theme with my rope climbing experiences. It's rare that you see me in a harness or on a rope, although I have been getting more into sport climbing, or had been getting more into sport climbing, and it's something that I want to work on, having predominantly been a boulder for like all of my climbing experience. Ropes is something that I felt I've neglected a lot, and I think that there's a lot to learn for me in sport climbing and rope climbing. So rope climbing definitely on the cards in the future. I just need to work on my mental game. In February 2018 we actually returned to the Forest of Font. We had only last been in Font in September, and we were back in February, and obviously this time it was a lot colder, and I remember that trip was basically just more of getting used to the forest. I wasn't particularly focused on climbing hard, thankfully. It was freezing cold. I think we had some snow, and just remember that trip being a lot of fun, and again just like us getting into the groove of sandstone climbing for one, but also font climbing. It's a very like specific style, I would say. When we got back from that trip, so at the beginning of 2018, we were spending a lot of time climbing outside in the Peak District and the Lake District in North Wales, and we actually were able to reconnect with some old friends that I had from high school who I hadn't seen in years, and we were able to reconnect through our kind of shared interest in climbing, which was great. It was also around about this time that I had started filming more YouTube content, specifically climbing content. So we were heading out into the Yorkshire Dales quite a lot, heading out into the Peak District quite a lot, and I was filming it and putting it on YouTube. A lot of those videos are now unlisted, but I'll share some of those clips here because I think they're really nice to look back on, and if you've been subscribed to me for a long time you might remember me posting them way back in 2018. But there was a lot of slow-mo and a lot of arty shots, and my style has definitely evolved into something more conversational and candid, which is really interesting to see. But this is just a time we were climbing a lot outside, and I just remember being, again, like we had the van and we were spending a lot of time outside in the Yorkshire Dales and the Peak District and just enjoying climbing. Not climbing especially hard, but just loving being outside at crags. Climbing outside in Yorkshire, maintaining my strength, going to the gym like 2 or 3 times a week, and then outdoors on the weekends. And then as we moved into summer, we had quite a few local crags so we could climb in the evenings, which was always really nice. And that's something that I've missed so much in the pandemic, and so much living down south where there's not so many outdoor crags that are climbable. After work climbs, they were good. They still are good. I'm looking forward to after work climbs again. So we had started planning another trip to Font, which was coming up in the autumn of 2000 and where are we in now? 2018 or 2018, I think. And I had decided that I really wanted to try and get a little bit stronger to make the most of this trip. So I started going to the gym. Nathan and I got gym membership, and we were doing lots of like weighted, like the 3 core lifts. So I was doing bench, deadlift, what's the other one, squat a lot. I'm really enjoying that. Also, I must have watched like The Fittest Person on Earth, or you know, the CrossFit documentary with Tia Toomey, and I was completely taken with like CrossFit style workouts and the whole like energy of CrossFit. So I'd started doing a lot of WODs. We would go to the gym and we would do like all the benchmark WODs and like nearly kill ourselves. And honestly, I'd say this time was probably like, I was probably my fittest around this time, all round. Maybe not my strongest, but definitely my fittest. I was doing a lot of cardio. I was doing a lot of strength training and just like loving it. I was probably exhausted all the time, but just really enjoying like going to the gym and feeling like I was getting stronger and training for climbing in a pretty unstructured way now that I look back. But yeah, I was just loving it. Anyway, we went with a couple of our friends to Fon and had a pretty good trip. I climbed a couple of 6Cs, and just as I always was when I came back from trips to Fon, I was just like super psyched on climbing and getting stronger, and I wanted to just like push my grade and see if I could improve and get better technically at climbing. When I came back from that trip at the end of 2018, I set myself the goal of getting my first outdoor V6 or 7A if you're in the UK by the end of 2018. So I had my eyes set on this one climb called Whiskey Galore at a crag called Brimham Rocks in the Yorkshire Dales, which if you are a Yorkshire climber you will probably be familiar with Brimham. But Whiskey Galore is this kind of like, how would you describe it? It's like a corner climb that you almost bridge your way up on crimps and small feet, and it's been a lot of people's first 7As in the kind of circles that I climb in, so I'd had my eye on it for a while. I tried it a couple of years back and had limited success, but it felt kind of like it might be possible, whereas I'd rocked up under a couple of 7As before and been like, that looks really hard. That month after I got back from Font, I became fixated on Whiskey Galore. It was like, I'd say my first real outdoor project that I went back for multiple times, and I went through the highs and lows of projecting on it, and it was my first outdoor boulder problem that I was really like, I was emotionally invested in this boulder problem. I would like dream about topping out this boulder problem, and that's not an exaggeration. Like, I would have dreams about getting to the top of Whiskey Galore. I was getting to the top most every time we went to try it, and then dropping the top move or dropping the top out, or not quite being able to commit to the top. And it was a really cool experience. Like, I got very frustrated with it at the time, but I think it was just all part of that like projecting process that I've had since, but hadn't really had before. And it was really type 2 enjoyable, you know? So one weekend in October, the temperatures were really good and the conditions were really good, so we headed out to Brimham on the weekend, and in my mind I was like, this is the day, I'm gonna climb Whiskey Galore. And in the end I did end up climbing Whiskey Galore, and that day I also ended up climbing, so my first 7A in Whiskey Galore, but then I also climbed my first 7A plus, a climb called Triple Effect. So now we're moving into 2019, we're still doing a lot of, I say we, Nathan and I, we're still doing a lot of CrossFit workouts, watching a lot of CrossFit documentaries, and getting really psyched because we were training for a trip to Albarracin in northern Spain with our friends Paddy and Sabrina. I was also entering a local league. So I mentioned in my previous videos that something I have really personally enjoyed throughout my climbing journey has been measuring progress by entering climbing competitions and climbing leagues at my local centre. So I entered a climbing competition at City Block Climbing in Leeds and ended up placing 3rd in that. It was my first ever kind of like competition style final. So I'm like, I'd never climbed in that style before, where you have 4 minutes to attempt a climb, and there's zones and it's all scored and there's an audience. And I remember being so nervous. I remember being so nervous that I could barely place my feet properly. I was like pretty much shaking on the wall, but that was a really cool first experience of like a climbing competition and what it feels like to climb under pressure in that way, because I never had before. Anyway, I ended up placing 4th in that climbing competition, so I just missed out on a podium. But yeah, it was a really cool experience and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, we went to Albarracin and I had a really good trip. I took a whole bunch of climbs that I was really happy with, including Galore, which was my first like overseas 7A, and I felt fairly strong considering my injury. I also filmed a lot of that trip, and still watching back over those vlogs, I really enjoy reliving that trip. It was a really good time. So we got back from Albarracin, and it was kind of like April, May time that the depot climbing centres opened a climbing centre in Sheffield. And the climbing centre in Sheffield, Manchester had previously, but the climbing centre in Sheffield had a competition wall, which I think I've like mentioned this in this video because I really think that this was the point at which I started trying a different style of climbing and started climbing more dynamically. If you're not too familiar with what a competition wall is or what competition climbing is, competition climbing in my book is basically a more dynamic parkour style of bouldering, and I've included this in this video because this was basically the first time that I had been faced with this style of climbing and having to be braver with like run and jumps and to move more dynamically. So I would say that this was when I really started gravitating towards the comp wall when we would go to Depot Sheffield and really experimenting in a new style and falling a lot and failing a lot, but just having the best time with it. In the September of 2019, so after that summer climbing outside and when we come back from Albarracin, I had been entering the summer league at City Block, and I made the final of the City Block summer bouldering league. So this was like my second live final, like competition style final, and this was actually the first final that I made podium on because I actually won it. So yeah, I was like really stoked on that. We decided that we would book another trip to Font, and this time I was going to Font with the idea in mind that I wanted to climb my first Font 7A. So Font is notoriously hard, and most all of the 7As that I'd looked at in Font, I just stood under them and been like, I will never, that will never. I started my training series on my YouTube channel, which seemed to go down quite well. I was creating a lot more climbing content again, filming my training. I don't know if those videos are still up. I got a training plan from my friend Paddy and I started training really hard. I started lifting a little bit heavier and going to the gym more consistently. It was also around about this time that I started opening up a little bit more about struggles with body image and climbing, and how I kind of saw my body in light of climbing and how my body had changed since I had started climbing and how that felt and how I was dealing with that. And the honest answer is not very well. I feel like I could make a whole video about climbing and body image. I did mention it briefly in my last climbing video, but it's kind of been a concern that has coloured most of my climbing experience, but it kind of really reared its head around about this time when I was like filming my training diaries and posting them to YouTube, and I was getting stronger and I was getting bigger, but I couldn't quite enjoy the gains I was making because I was dealing with some stuff internally, which I will talk about. Again, like I've said, I've teased, I will talk about it at some point on my channel in a more structured, thought through way. So we went off to Font at the end of 2019, spent Christmas and the New Year there, and I did manage to get my first outdoor 7A in Font, and I was very pleased. So yeah, now we're at the end of 2019, and I think I'm going to leave it there because I think there's a lot to say about 2020, and there's already shaping up to be a lot to say about 2021. So maybe towards the end of this year I'll bring out the third. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I really enjoy watching these videos online because I'm nosy, basically. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed following along on my climbing journey from 2017, 18 to now. In the next few months I will be talking a little bit about 2020 and what that was like from a climbing perspective, and the beginning of 2021 and kind of like where I'm at now, I guess. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in my next one.